So let's just break down, as you say, there's 4 elements to your BITE model: behavioural control, information control, thought control, emotional control. Clearly, everybody knows who Donald Trump is, right? And he does everything pretty much in public. So can you just take us through behaviour control? Is Donald Trump capable of controlling people's behaviour? How does that match onto your model? Because people say, I'm free, and it's all about freedom.
The model shifted when the internet got created and there was search engine optimization, because if you're being fed a stream of influences on your cell phone, social media, text, or in regular media, it's going to shape your thinking, your beliefs. It's going to change you emotionally, and those 2 things are going to influence how you behave. And so, but critically, I would like to state categorically, human beings were not evolved to be online 10 hours a day. We are social beings to be in real life, and the pandemic supercharged the mind control isolation piece. But people should be sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night, and people are on their screens before they go to sleep. I tell people, stop looking at the screens an hour to 2 hours before you go to sleep. Listen to music. Do something to get out your brain off the dopamine addiction and attention addiction of the social media platforms. But coming back to the need for human beings to be open to learning, to be open to changing your mind, and to learn how to discern what's a ethical source of information and what is propaganda or disinformation. And one of the theses of the cult of Trump is that there are bad actors. They want to destroy democracy. They want to destroy faith in experts, faith in science, faith in democratic institution, create such polarization and alienation and estrangement that will make it easy for a takeover.
What is it about Donald J. Trump that makes him a cult leader? Why is he the person that has been able to reach this status?
So I wrote in my book that the origins for Trump was he was raised in a cult of Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. And in that mindset, it mirrors these new apostolic reformation and prosperity ministers, because Peale would say, if you believe it 100%, God's going to manifest it. And therefore, doubt is a sin. So never doubt your vision and your faith.
You write in the book that Trump was essentially taken there every week by his father to the Marble Collegiate Church in Manhattan. But weirdly, subsequently, Trump actually mischaracterized the religion there, didn't he? He said that he was a Presbyterian, and they had to point out that, in fact, it's not a Presbyterian church.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. But the thing is that he had a very unhappy childhood, authoritarian parents who were racist and with a Nazi leaning. Roy Cohn was a major influence over him as well. He was groomed for years. I mean, and if you listen to people who did business with him who were stiffed because he didn't pay the bills after they did work for him, one could say he had a cult of personality. He walked around with certainty and arrogance, and they literally created an image that Donald Trump was a successful businessman when he wasn't. He had bankruptcy after bankruptcy, and he got bailed out by the Russian mafia largely from his failures.
He had managed never to become personally bankrupt, but corporately had a number of massive bankruptcies into the hundreds of millions.
But the point is image control, information control, and people can get deceived. And how do they get deceived? I was deceived by women flirting with me, giving me the impression they wanted to be my girlfriend, and lying and saying they were students at Queens College, which they weren't, lying, saying they weren't part of any religious group at all. So, but the point is you can be tricked step by step by step until you get hypnotized and indoctrinated into a belief system. And part of the indoctrination is they want to alienate you from family and friends. And what we're facing right now is this massive estrangement where almost everyone I talk to says, I have a family member or a friend who's become MAGA. I don't recognize them. They've completely changed their value systems. And I try to argue with them and they won't listen. And I say, don't do that.
Thanksgiving is not far away. Christmas is coming up. There's a lot of people spending time with a lot of family members in the next few weeks. How do you deal with your MAGA uncle? How do you deal with your MAGA cousin-in-law who's, sitting on the other side of the turkey and doesn't seem to live in the same country as you do?
The answer is that people need to take the time to learn about mind control cults. And when I was first asked by my book agent to write the book, The Cult of Trump, I said no, because it will alienate everybody who is believing in Trump. And he argued, they won't read the book anyway, write the book for everyone else. And I thought long and hard, so I did that. But what people need to do now is they need to think about people they were close to, especially family and friends. And most people that I talk to have blocked these people or not invited them for Thanksgiving, etc.
One thing you mentioned was blocking on social media, and I think every one of us knows some, friend or relative of a friend or whatever who said, oh God, I just couldn't take uncle whatever, an aunt whatever. I just blocked them. I just muted them. So then they're confronted in real life. What do you do?
We need to make a massive effort to reach out to these people, say, I miss you, I want you back in my life. Expect them to be angry at you. You blocked me. You didn't invite me for the last 3 years to Thanksgiving, and you apologize. To the best of your ability, be as sincere as possible and say, I want a redo or I want a reboot. And I'm sorry for things said and done, but we're family and let's be together. Let's be in each other's life. And if it means not talking about politics, let's agree not to bring it up, but let's talk about our children, our grandchildren, our pets, our travel vacations, etc. And if it does come up and we want to talk about it, let's agree on ground rules to talk respectfully, to not interrupt, to ask questions and be a good listener, and not try to persuade anybody. And the
that
truth
last
will
point
out. It's like if something's legitimate, it will stand up to scrutiny. And I'm open to reconsidering things.
So I just broke one of your rules by trying to interrupt there, but
It's okay.
We're
wanted human beings. Nobody's perfect. I interrupt too. I catch myself and I apologize, right? But the point is that I want the public to understand when you're brainwashed, your real identity is still in your neurons in your brain. The real Steve was still there. I just had a Mooney brain that took over and wouldn't allow the real me to talk. The minute the real me could talk and I could think about what I was feeling and experiencing, the whole thing fell apart. And I woke up and I realized Moon was a liar and a cheat and a bad person. So people will leave, but we want them to leave with their face saving, not with I told you so, why didn't you listen to me, finger wagging. Just like we're in a crisis, we're family. There are some 40 million people that are going to not have food benefits come November. How do you feel about that? That there are children not going to get food?
So one of the things that you talk about is compartmentalizing information, and you describe it as insider versus outsider doctrines. But many of the things that, obviously, we are an intensely politicized society right now.
Yep.
And you mentioned people not getting SNAP, what's known as food stamps, but the Supplementary Nutritional Assistance Program. There are people on the MAGA side who would say that's Democrats' fault. How do you deal with that when you're confronted with it? And I don't just mean that specifically, but that's often, well, you talked about X. It's all the Democrats' fault. It's all the fault of Obama. It's the fault of Clinton. I mean, this kind of goes back a long way, but how do you get past that when you're the person trying to bring the temperature down?
What I've learned is what you never do if you want to help someone who's been brainwashed. You never want to attack the leader, the doctrine, or the policy head on. Why? Because it activates the cult identity to defend and think you're persecuting them and that you're evil. What works is talking about other groups that they would agree are bad. With MAGA people, it's talking about Chinese communist brainwashing and what the criteria, like Robert Lifton's 8 criteria of brainwashing in his 1961 book, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, and asking what people think of those 8 criteria, or pimps and traffickers and how they recruit and indoctrinate people to be sex slaves or labor slaves. And that opens the door to the person realizing there is such a thing as brainwashing. I think you're brainwashed by the Democrats. I'm not. But let's look at the models and use those to reality test. And the most effective technique is asking a good question to somebody who's in MAGA or somebody who's in an authoritarian group, being patient, waiting for a response. When the person gives the response, I recommend active listening, which means repeating back. So if I want to make sure I understood you, you said this and this and this. Did I get it right? So the person really feels like you're paying attention to them. And then you ask a follow-up question. And a follow-up question, because what's going to help the person exit is themselves starting to reality test. How does this compare with lies told by pimps that they love you? And that's why they're making you sleep with 18 guys a day and get venereal diseases. Or the Chinese communists, that they believe that the cause is more important than individual, rights, etc. So, but if you know the person before they got into MAGA, you'll know what kinds of values they had. So you want to always show photos, recall family trips, videos, to get the person re-accessing who they were before, and ask them, I'm curious if you can go back in time to that period, what you would think if you were now supporting someone who was like giving billions of dollars to Argentina and moving an aircraft carrier